There is a decisive moment in the spiritual journey of a false twin flame, a moment when no mask can hold. It's when she finally wakes up to the truth she spent her entire life trying to avoid. She destroyed a destined love. This isn't a gentle realization, nor an enlightened awakening. It's a raw, visceral, almost traumatic internal collapse. It's when consciousness explodes like lightning and reveals that she rejected the one connection capable of transforming her soul. Have you ever lived through something like this? That overwhelming, undeniable connection that seemed written in the stars before you were even born, but was tossed aside as if it meant nothing. You stood there, lost between pain and disbelief, while the other person ran, chose someone easier, safer, more surface level? Because the truth is that twin flame connections aren't always easy. Sometimes they don't come to comfort. They come to evolve, to break patterns, to force each person to integrate their shadows and become someone greater than they were before. As Carl Jung brilliantly taught us, shadow integration is essential for becoming whole. And that's exactly what soul connections demand, that we face these denied parts of ourselves. But not everyone is ready for this. What nobody told you is that the story doesn't end there. Because when a soul rejects a destined love, the universe doesn't let it slide. It doesn't punish, it corrects. And this correction is the most brutal breaking point a false twin flame can experience. Today, I'm going to show you exactly what happens when this person finally sees what they've done. And if you stay until the end, you'll discover why this process isn't cosmic revenge, but rather the most loving mechanism the universe has to correct deviations from destiny. Because maybe you didn't lose your twin flame. Maybe you were protected from someone who wasn't ready to honor a sacred connection. Subscribe to the channel now if you haven't already, because what I'm about to reveal here will completely shift your perspective on false twin flames, destiny, and spiritual justice. Before we understand the stages of the breaking point, you need to grasp what it really means when someone acts as a false twin flame in another person's life. Because there's a fundamental difference between someone who genuinely isn't your twin flame and someone who is, but runs from the connection out of fear, immaturity, or attachment to destructive patterns. The first situation is natural, part of the journey of discovery. The second is a betrayal not only of the other person, but of the soul itself. A false twin flame in this specific context isn't someone you confused with your cosmic counterpart. It's someone who truly carries markers of a deep and destined connection, but who consciously or unconsciously chooses to reject this connection in favor of something more familiar, more comfortable, more aligned with external expectations. It's the person who felt the recognition but fled from it, who saw the depth but chose superficiality, who touched the sacred but returned to the ordinary, because the sacred demanded transformation they weren't willing to face. And here's what almost nobody tells you about these situations. When someone rejects a genuinely destined connection, when they choose a superficial relationship instead of a love that could completely transform them, they don't simply move forward unscathed. They carry an energetic mark, a vibrational signature of the rejected connection that will haunt them in increasingly intense ways until they're forced to confront what they did. This doesn't happen because the universe is punitive. It happens because certain connections are spiritual contracts established long before incarnation. When one of these souls decides unilaterally to break the contract, it's not just a common human decision to end a relationship. It's a violation of a sacred agreement that has consequences on levels of reality that ordinary consciousness cannot access. Deep studies of the psyche reveal that when we deny fundamental aspects of our inner truth, when we betray authentic impulses of the soul in favor of ego constructs, we create cracks in the very foundation of our identity. These cracks start small, almost imperceptible. But over time, under the pressure of circumstances that life inevitably brings, these cracks expand until they become chasms that threaten to swallow the entire constructed personality. The person who rejected you may seem perfectly happy right now. Maybe posting smiling photos with the new person they chose. Maybe building a life that to outside eyes appears complete, fulfilled, successful. But beneath this carefully maintained surface, something is happening. A subtle restlessness she still can't name. A persistent feeling that something fundamental is missing. A question that whispers in the quietest hours of the night. What if I made the biggest mistake of my life? At first, she manages to suppress these questions. Manages to convince herself she made the right choice, that she's happy, that you were just a confusing phase she wisely moved past. She may even create elaborate narratives about why your relationship wouldn't have worked. listing incompatibilities she invented herself to justify the rejection. And for a while, these narratives work. They keep the illusion intact. But the universe has a very specific way of dealing with illusions built on foundations of denial. It doesn't destroy them all at once. It erodes them gradually, systematically, until the person has no choice but to face the raw truth they've been avoiding all along. And this erosion process follows very specific stages that are surprisingly consistent, no matter who the person is or what the specific circumstances are. The first stage happens so subtly that she doesn't even consciously notice. It's when the echoes begin. Small reminders of you that surface in the most unexpected and seemingly random moments. She's watching a movie, and suddenly a specific scene brings a vivid memory of something you shared. She hears a song on the radio that was special to you both, and feels a stab in her chest she can't explain. She sees someone on the street who has a gesture similar to yours and freezes for seconds, heart racing for no apparent reason. These echoes aren't ordinary memories of a past relationship. They have a different quality, more visceral, more penetrating. It's as if each memory carries an emotional charge disproportionate to what would be expected from a connection she claims to have moved past. And here's what leaves her especially confused. These echoes don't diminish over time. On the contrary, they intensify. The more she tries to build her new life, the more you appear at the edges of her consciousness, like a ghost that refuses to be exorcised. She may try to rationalize these experiences, may tell herself it's normal to feel occasional nostalgia for someone who was important, may try to convince herself these memories will eventually disappear if she just gives it enough time. But deep down, somewhere beyond the reach of rationalization, a part of her knows this isn't ordinary longing. It's something far more disturbing. It's the insistent call of a part of the soul she left behind when she chose to run from you. During this first stage, she still manages to maintain the facade. She doesn't talk about you, doesn't let on to others that you still occupy significant space in her psyche. But alone, in the moments of silence between the constant distractions she creates to avoid thinking, you're there, always there, like a presence she can't explain or eliminate. And then comes something that dramatically amplifies the disturbance. She starts having dreams about you. Not just occasional vague dreams, but intense, vivid dreams loaded with symbolism and emotion that persist long after she wakes up. In these dreams, you're together, but there's always something preventing complete union. Doors that close when she's about to reach you. Paths that fork exactly when you're walking side by side. You disappearing the moment she finally decides to surrender to the connection. These dreams aren't just random products of the mind processing memories. Jung proved that dreams are messengers from the unconscious. They carry specific symbolism that attempts to compensate for the imbalances in our consciousness. These dreams about the lost connection are compensation dreams, attempts by the psyche to correct a fundamental error. They carry specific messages from the unconscious, signals that something fundamental is misaligned in her life. They're the beginning of the process, by which the soul tries to communicate to consciousness that a grave mistake has been made, that a wrong path has been taken, that an essential truth is being denied. But she's still not ready to listen. So she does what most people do when confronted with inconvenient truths. She distracts herself more, dives deeper into the relationship she chose, intensifies efforts to prove to herself and others that she's happy, posts more on social media, talks more about how amazing her life is, performs happiness with an intensity that only someone trying to convince themselves really demonstrates. And it's exactly this intensification of the performance that marks the transition to the second stage, growing cognitive dissonance. She begins to notice, even without wanting to consciously admit it, that there's a gap between what she says she feels and what she actually feels, between the life she's building and the life a deep part of her yearns for, between the person she's with and the person she should be with. This dissonance manifests in ways increasingly impossible to ignore. She's with the person she chose, having an apparently normal conversation, but suddenly realizes she's comparing. She's noticing how this person doesn't understand certain things about her the way you understood, how she needs to explain thoughts and feelings that you simply captured without words, how there's a level of depth, of connection, of mutual recognition that simply doesn't exist, no matter how much she tries to force it. And most disturbing, she begins to perceive that she's performing intimacy, saying the right words, making the appropriate gestures, but without the internal resonance that transforms actions into true connection. It's like acting in a play where she's memorized all the lines perfectly, but completely forgot what it's like to feel the emotions those lines should express. And this realization, even when it's not yet completely conscious, begins to create an inner void that no amount of effort can fill. During this second stage, she may start becoming irritated for no apparent reason, may become critical of the person she chose, finding flaws that didn't bother her before, may start creating conflicts over insignificant things, not because these things really matter, but because the internal frustration needs an outlet, and the person she's with becomes confused, not understanding why suddenly nothing they do seems to be enough. The truth, which she still can't articulate even to herself, is that the problem isn't with the person she's with. The problem is the absence of the person she should be with. You. Their presence highlights your absence in increasingly painful ways. Each moment of mediocrity in the current connection is a reminder of the extraordinary she rejected. Each superficial conversation is an echo of the deep conversations you shared. Each touch without spark is a phantom memory of the electricity that existed when you touched. And then something happens that drastically accelerates the process. She starts receiving external signals. Not just the internal echoes and disturbing dreams, but manifestations in the physical world that seem specifically designed to force her to think about you. It could be that mutual friends mention your name in the most unexpected moments. It could be that she sees your name in random places, written on signs, heard in strangers' conversations. It could be that she finds objects that remind her of you in situations that defy statistical probability. These external signals, combined with the growing internal restlessness, begin to create psychological pressure that becomes increasingly difficult to ignore. It's as if the universe is gently but persistently tapping her shoulder, saying, "You need to pay attention to what you're avoiding. You need to look at the truth that's buried under layers of denial and justifications." But still, in this second stage, she resists. Because admitting the truth at this point would mean acknowledging she made a terrible mistake, would mean confronting the possibility that she destroyed something precious that may not be recoverable, would mean dismantling the life she built with so much effort to prove she made the right choice. And that prospect is so terrifying that she prefers to continue in dissonance, however uncomfortable it's becoming. The third stage arrives like an emotional avalanche she can no longer control. It's when cognitive dissonance reaches such extreme levels that physical and psychological symptoms impossible to ignore begin to appear. She may start having anxiety attacks seemingly without cause, may develop insomnia, waking repeatedly in the middle of the night with a racing heart and a sense of urgency she can't explain, may feel a weight on her chest that accompanies her throughout the days, a diffuse sadness that has no name or identifiable origin. At this point, she may try to seek external help, may look for therapy, hoping someone will help her understand why she suddenly feels so lost when her life seems so organized, may do exercise, meditation, anything that promises to bring peace to the internal turbulence that's intensifying. But nothing works in any lasting way, because the problem isn't generalized anxiety or situational depression. It's the soul in revolt against a fundamental betrayal. During this third stage, something crucial begins to happen. She begins to actively question the choice she made. For the first time, she allows herself to consciously think about what would have happened if she'd chosen you. She begins to revisit memories she had deliberately suppressed, allowing herself to feel again the intensity, the depth, the magic that existed between you. And as these memories resurface with all their emotional force, current reality seems increasingly pale, more artificial, more fundamentally wrong. She may start stalking your social media, looking for signs of how you are, if you've moved on, if you're happy, if you found someone else. And each photo of yours, each update, each piece of evidence that you exist and are living without her, creates a disproportionate emotional reaction. It's not simple jealousy. It's an agonizing recognition that she gave up something irreplicable, someone irreplaceable, a connection that won't be duplicated no matter how much she searches. It's during this stage that she may try, in subtle or direct ways, to re-establish contact with you. May send an apparently casual message asking how you are. May like old posts of yours, signaling she's thinking about you. May arrange ways to appear in places where she knows you'll be. These attempts aren't consciously and manipulatively planned. They come from a deep impulse, an almost desperate need to verify if the bridge between you still exists or if she destroyed it completely. And here's where the process becomes especially painful for her. If you've already moved on, if you demonstrate indifference or have established clear boundaries that prevent her from easily returning, this catalyzes the fourth stage in a devastating way. The collapse. The point where all the psychological defenses she built crumble simultaneously, and she's forced to confront the naked truth of what she did. The fourth stage is the breaking point itself. It's when denial becomes impossible and truth erupts into consciousness with a force that completely shatters the narrative she had constructed to justify her choices. This moment doesn't happen gradually. It happens suddenly, like a lightning bolt of lucidity that cuts through all layers of illusion and leaves her completely exposed to the reality she was avoiding. It may be triggered by a specific event. Maybe she sees you with someone else and feels pain so acute she can no longer pretend you don't matter. Maybe she has an argument with the person she chose and perceives with crystal clarity that she's trying to force something that will never be what you had. Maybe she simply wakes up one day and the truth is there. Undeniable. Impossible to keep avoiding. She destroyed the truest love she ever had. She rejected the deepest connection her soul ever experienced. She traded destiny for convenience. And now it may be too late to undo what was done. This recognition doesn't come as relief or liberating clarity. It comes as emotional devastation so deep, it completely reorganizes the way she sees herself and sees all the choices she made. It's as if the ground disappeared and she's in free fall, with nothing to hold on to, no way to deny or escape what she finally understood. During this fourth stage, she may experience what's described as the dark night of the soul, a deep depression that's not caused by chemical imbalance, but by confrontation with devastating existential truths. She realizes that she didn't just lose you. She realizes she betrayed herself, that she chose fear instead of courage, familiarity instead of growth, external approval instead of internal truth. And these choices didn't just cost her relationship with you. They cost her integrity, her authenticity, her alignment with the soul's deepest purpose. The guilt that arises in this stage isn't the superficial, manipulable guilt that can be easily rationalized. It's existential guilt, the perception that she failed a fundamental test of courage and faith, that the universe offered her something sacred and she discarded it as if it were ordinary, that you opened your heart completely and she trampled it not because you weren't enough, but because she wasn't brave enough to honor what she had. During this collapse, she may desperately try to correct the situation, may show up in your life with intense declarations, promising she finally understood, that she's ready now, that she'll never run again, may beg for a second chance with a vulnerability and urgency she never demonstrated before. And here's what's crucial to understand. This isn't calculated manipulation. It's genuine desperation of a soul that woke from the nightmare of its own choices and is terrified by the possibility that the destruction it caused may be irreversible. But here's the hard truth she needs to face at this point. Maybe it's too late. Maybe you've healed enough not to want to return to someone who destroyed you once. Maybe you've grown beyond the need for this specific connection. Maybe the universe closed that door because she wasted the timing that was carefully orchestrated. And this possibility, this chance that her late realization arrived too late to change anything, is the particular hell she created for herself through her own choices. If she can't win you back, if that door is really closed definitively, she enters the fifth and final stage, painful integration. It's when she's forced to live with the complete consequences of having destroyed a destined love. And this experience becomes the most brutal, but possibly the most transformative teacher she'll have in this lifetime. The fifth stage isn't about you coming back or not coming back. It's about her learning the lesson this entire experience was designed to teach. Jung said that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. That's exactly what's happening here. She's being forced to confront what was buried in the unconscious. Because here's what most people don't understand about these processes. The universe doesn't orchestrate these situations out of cruelty or to punish mistakes. It orchestrates because certain souls need to learn specific lessons about courage, authenticity, and the cost of betraying genuine impulses of the soul. And sometimes, the only way to learn these lessons is by experiencing the complete consequences of not having learned them in time. During this final stage, she may go through a profound transformation, but not without first crossing an emotional desert that seems to have no end. She'll have to learn to live with regret in a way that doesn't completely paralyze her. She'll have to find meaning in the mistake she made, transforming the experience of having lost you into wisdom that prevents her from making the same mistake in the future. She'll have to develop compassion for herself without falling into the self-indulgence of seeing herself only as a victim of circumstances. She'll discover, through this relentless pain, that certain choices in life cannot be undone. That timing is everything when it comes to soul connections. That you can recognize the sacred but still lose it if you don't have the courage to honor it when it presents itself. And these lessons, learned the hardest way possible, will fundamentally change her. If she does the necessary inner work, if she truly integrates what this experience is trying to teach, she may emerge from this process as a radically different person. More courageous, more authentic, more capable of honoring inconvenient truths. More willing to choose the difficult but true, instead of the easy but false. And this transformation, ironically, may finally turn her into the person who would have been capable of sustaining a connection like what you had. This is exactly the individuation process Jung described, becoming who you truly are. The pain forces this transformation she was avoiding. But now, this capacity developed too late only serves to show her, with painful clarity, exactly what she lost. And you? Where do you fit in this entire story? Here's what you need to understand. Her breaking point has nothing to do with you coming back or not coming back. It's not about giving her the second chance she's begging for. It's about you recognizing that when someone rejects a destined connection, when they choose the false instead of the true, it's not because you weren't enough. It's because she wasn't ready. And this lack of readiness isn't your responsibility to fix. The process she's going through now, all this pain and late recognition, is the natural consequence of having betrayed not you, but herself. It's the universe's way of correcting the deviation she created by fleeing from the path her soul had traced. And if you allow her pain to pull you back into a dynamic that already destroyed you once, you'll be interfering not only with your own healing, but with the lessons she needs to learn. Because here's the deepest truth about all this. If you're truly destined twin flames, not just people with an intense connection, then the universe will create the conditions for you to reunite when both are truly ready. Not when she's desperate and you're still wounded. Not when she's panicking about having lost you and you're still vulnerable to emotional manipulation. But when both have done the necessary inner work to sustain a connection of that level in a healthy, mature, and conscious way. And if that reunion never happens, if that door is really closed definitively, then the lesson is equally important. That you deserve someone who chooses you without hesitation, who recognizes your value without needing to lose you first to understand, who has the courage to honor a sacred connection the moment it presents itself, not just after it's too late. The pain she's feeling now, this entire process of rupture and recognition, shouldn't bring satisfaction of the revenge type. It should bring clarity. The clarity that when you truly love someone, when you offer an authentic connection, and that person chooses something else, her loss is much greater than yours. Because you only lost someone who wasn't ready for you. She lost someone who was ready for her. You can find other people who are ready. She'll have to become a completely different person to find again what she had with you. And that's the most perfect justice the universe could offer. It's not about punishment or suffering. It's about natural consequences of choices made freely. It's about learning in the way the soul needs to learn when the mind refuses to hear more subtle signals. It's about the universe ensuring that nobody rejects a destined connection without fully understanding the weight of what they rejected. If you recognized your own story in this video, if you felt I was speaking directly about the situation you lived or are still living, I need to tell you about something that can completely transform your journey of healing and growth from this experience. I created 2 exclusive materials based on the deepest principles about transformation through pain and accelerated spiritual growth. The first is 21 Days of Transformation with Carl Jung, a practical guide that will take you through a structured process of healing, self-knowledge, and developing the inner strength necessary to move through not just the pain of rejection, but transform it into wisdom and personal power. It's 21 days of specific exercises, deep reflections, and techniques to integrate this experience in a way that strengthens you instead of destroying you. The second is the Soul Survival Manual for the hardest days, because I know that when you're moving through pain of this magnitude, some days are simply brutal to endure. This manual contains practical strategies for the moments when the temptation to go back is almost irresistible, when loneliness seems unbearable, when you question whether you can really overcome this. The links are in the first pinned comment of this video. And now I want to know who really made it to the end of this journey with me. Write in the comments, "I choose my own peace," because that shows me you're not just another viewer, but someone who's truly committed to your growth through this experience. Remember that only a small percentage of people who experience twin flame rejection manage to transform this experience into a catalyst for exponential growth instead of just unresolved trauma. Not because it's impossible, but because it requires courage to release who didn't choose you and faith that something better exists. You made it this far because your soul knows you're capable of this transformation. Thank you for having the courage to look directly at the most painful but also most transformative aspects of human connections. I'll see you in the next video.